Hi, this is Dan Matson. Please note this podcast was created several years ago. Some of the links, email addresses, phone numbers, and promos are outdated and no longer valid. Thanks and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 126. I am your host today, Dan Matson, aka WoodenBoat. Dan, if you can't do it, nobody can. Although there's been many botched attempts to do some of the things I do. This is the world's first podcast, that's right, the very first in the world, fully 110% dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance. Don't forget the romance, that's an important part of it, of wooden vessels around the globe. Internationally, nationally, locally, regionally, and extraterrestrially, if there is such a word. So welcome to the podcast today, folks. Good to have you on board. It's been a busy week here at home. The international headquarters of Hooked on Wooden Boats has moved 10 miles north to Stanwood, Washington, home of the HOWB shop, which has a great selection of lutefisk, lefse, and assorted Norwegian treats. And seeing that I have a Scandinavian background, I may head down to the HOWB shop one of these days. But my wife and I did get moved this week to our new place, so I'm in a new office here with my studio set up, and I'm really liking it. I'm looking out my back, over my backyard from the second floor at Cedar Home Elementary School, which is kind of fun to watch the activity at a school, although it's at night now. There's no activity, and I don't see any vandals over there, so yeah, there's no activity. Anyway, it's been a busy week. We moved this weekend 2 huge loads and the biggest U-Haul known to man, and a bunch of other loads with some trucks and van and stuff, and lots of friends, lots of help from friends and family. Things went pretty smoothly. We're in our new place, but we still got a lot of stuff to go through, and it's one of those things you move and then you go, okay, where did I put my toothbrush? What about that plastic bin I had my socks in at the other house? Has anybody seen that? Oh, and my checkbook, was that in with my printer box, or was that with the books? You know how the drill is, folks. Anyway, we're in, and it's a nice place, and I think it's going to work out well. It's also going to be a while before I get my shop set up, because the 2-car garage now is full of boxes that we've got to figure out what to do with. So I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll leave the garage door open tonight. If you come by about 2 in the morning, you can have anything you want. Just don't say anything to anybody. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Very good. Today's featured segment is an interview with Terry Learned of the Learned Boat Shop in Pacific City, Oregon. This is a multi-generational business started by Terry's father, building plywood dories especially suited for fishing off the Oregon coast and launching through the surf. These boats are about 22 feet long. They've been doing this since the mid-'70s. Terry's carried on the tradition of his father. It's a really fun interview. Terry's a really cool guy. It's just a labor of love for him. He doesn't make much money on it, but he just continues to do it because it's so much fun. So stick around for that interview. I think you're going to like it. In case you haven't listened to last week's podcast, I put a tip button on my website if you'd like to contribute towards helping pay for my cost of doing the podcast, which is, I don't know, it's around $1,000, $1,500 a year. You go to my homepage on the right-hand side, click on the button, and donate whatever amount, or tip whatever amount you like. I like the word tip better. Also, my ebook is now published as a Kindle book. Get in the wooden boat game, a guide to building your first boat. You can check that out on Amazon. It costs $5.99. And if you purchase the book, or if you've read the ebook, I'd love it if you would leave a review on Amazon. Leave an honest review and let me know what you think of it. That would be awesome. Okay, we're going to move right into the interview with Terry Learned of the Learned Boat Shop in Pacific City, Oregon. Take it away, Terry. You know, before we start the interview, I wanted to add an addendum here. After careful thought and deliberation, I've decided for the time being that Hooked on Wooden Boats podcast will be published bi-weekly. So there will be an episode published today, which is March 6th, 2014, and the next one will be in 2 weeks. Reason for his decision is my schedule has just gotten way too busy to do this every week and do a good job, so I'm going to go to every other week. And at some point in the future, I will return to a weekly schedule, but just wanted to let you know what my decision is, and I appreciate your patience and support for Hooked on Wooden Boats. And now we're going to move on to the interview. Thanks. It is February 26, 2014. I am on the phone with Terry Learned. Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I'm honored to be invited.
Yeah, it's good to have you on board. And Terry is the proprietor of the Learned Boat Shop, which builds dories. Been doing that since the mid-'70s. Before we talk about that, though, Terry, could you give us a little bit of your personal history as a kid and what you were doing, where you were at, and so on?
Well, pretty interesting because we grew up as boat people. My grandfather was a commercial fisherman on our little river, which is called the Nestucca River, and he had a commercial fishery at the mouth of it in the late 1800s into the early 1900s. With a cannery at the mouth of it, and sailing ships used to come in and haul the fish away. Well, my granddad, he got involved in that as a teenager, as a single teenager, and through that and through some of the other fishermen, met my grandmother as a single gal and married her. And they lived in a little shack, the fisherman's shack, right by the cannery until they got married in 1918, and then my dad was born in 1919 down there. And then he left there because that's no place to raise a kid in a little one-room shack. And they closed the river commercial fishing in 1926. And so my granddad was heavily involved in fisheries with wooden boats. And then my dad came along. Well, he, just because of the lineage, secondary income got to be dairy farming, milking the cows and stuff like that. But you could still fish in between. So when the cannery closed, we started the fishermen started fishing offshore, and we had no harbor or port here. The bar at the river, the bar crossing, was so rough that nobody wanted to do that in a small boat. So started fishing right through the surf offshore, and you could catch fish within a half a mile ashore. We have a little sandstone cape here. It's called Cape Kiwanda, and for the northerlies that blow in the summer, it gives you pretty good protection, and the surf is pretty docile right in there. And so in the old days, you had to row out with 2 sets of oars and then roll back in the evening. And then as outboard motors developed, guys cut a little hole in the back of the boat right down through the bottom, framed it in, and they use it like a 4 or 5 or 6 horse for fishing, pull it back out of the hole and roll ashore again. So, and then that's when I started fishing with my dad when he got a spruce plank double ender in 1948. And I was 8 years old at the time, and started fishing with him, just occasionally, and fell in love with it. And then my dad built in 1957 a plywood double ender when plywood became available. And then we fished that several years. I went in the military and came back, and fishing was so good I had to build my first boat, dory, for myself in 1967. And then I have my third plywood dory at the present time now, square sterner. So, and then between all these boats, I fished a 38-footer for 2 or 3 years, but didn't like being away from home all that time. So I come by it naturally.
Yeah. So the cannery that your grandfather had there is you're on the Nest. What was the name of the river again, Terry?
Yeah, Nestucca.
Nestucca River.
An Indian tribe. Yeah, Nestucca. Mm-hmm.
And that's in northern coast of Oregon, is that right?
Yeah, northern coast of Oregon. Most all the rivers had a commercial fishery back in those days on them.
And that was it all salmon, Terry?
Yes, yeah, king salmon. They didn't mess with the coho, silvers, or anything like that. Just a king salmon.
Really, just kings. Wow. So
Yeah,
you probably saw
and
some
very successful.
You probably saw some big fish in your day.
Yeah, my granddad, there's a picture of him with his future brother-in-law in 1910, and he caught one that it was the biggest fish ever caught in the Nestucca River, 63.5 pounds in around weight.
Man.
Holding it up on a pole between his future brother-in-law and himself. And so, biggest one ever caught here.
Oh, my goodness. That's a massive fish.
One big fish, I'll tell you. Yep.
Now, did your grandfather build his own boats, Terry?
He never did. He said I could never drive a nail. So he always had to have somebody else build a boat for him. He said, I just can't do that. And so...
Okay. Now,
he didn't build them. He just used the wood boats. They were plank boats, where you had to recaulk the bottoms and the sides all the time on them.
Yeah. Were those Dory-style boats?
They were Dory style, but basically no motor power, just oars. And they were more like a skiff. They were like 16 to 18 feet long to hold the gill net and the fish and stuff. They had to be that big. But they were just a river boat, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then when did the actual boat building start with your family then?
Well, my dad, like I say, started building a boat. When I was 11 years old, that'd be 1951, for a Christmas present, he built me a little boat about 10, 12 feet long for a river boat, and I had a set of oars with it. He says, when you learn to swim, we'll find a way to get a motor for it. And so I had to take swimming lessons at the local YMCA in the town called Tillamook. And the next summer, and I got a swimming certificate, so I cashed in a $50 war bond and bought me a little 3.5 horse Evinrude. And that was my first outboard, and that's when I was 12 years old. And I've always had boats ever since then. But my dad, he wanted to build a boat when he was in high school in 1937, and the whole school went down to the river, which was just a couple hundred yards from the school, to watch him launch it. He didn't know that planks had to swell up to make them not leak. And he put the boat in the river and it sank. And that was so embarrassing to him. He never built another one. He built one for me in 1951 so, for Christmas.
Really? Oh, my goodness.
But then once we started building with plywood, I'll tell you what, it just changed the whole building process.
Yeah, and what year did you start building with plywood again, Terry?
Well, he built his first one in 1957, and you know about plywood because besides a little bit of commercial fishing, besides milking the dairy cows, they're just a small herd, he worked in the local plywood mill, which a lot of the guys did just to supplement income and stuff, and he found out about the marine grade Douglas fir plywood, and so he talked to the guy that made the long sheets out of it. You take the 4x8s and, make them long sheets, and he got enough to build a double-end dory, and then I helped him a little bit on that, 1957. So,
and what plans did he use for that dory then? Do you remember?
He just had a design in his head, and he followed that. The angle, the rake of the bow, and the flare, and the sides, and everything. And he built it different than anybody else's. A very practical boat. But he had an eye for that kind of stuff, naturally. And he always wanted the bows, and this is one thing that's kind of our trademark. He said, if I can't build a boat with a proud look to the bow, he says, I won't build a boat. I don't want them looking boxy. I don't want them any other way. I want to have a proud look. Well, consequently, that's a very seaworthy look, too. And we've always strived to do that with our boats.
Okay. And so when did the boat shop officially open?
Actually, we built our first boat in here, like I say, the winter of 74. It's a dairy barn. He built a newer barn, but then his back bothered him, so he milked cows in it for about 2 years. Cement floor. We had to fill the gutters in where the cows did their business right behind them. We filled all that in. It's got a solid cement floor, a little ceiling, and we started building in here, and actually in the winter of 74, 75. I built my second dory using a boat shop from the neighbors who were actually starting to shut down. And I built my second dory in the late summer and fall of 74. And when one of the guys seen that, said, well, will you build me one like what you just built? And I said, well, okay. And that was our first one here in our old barn, which is still going today, doing fine for us.
Yeah. So when you started in those early days, Terry, were there customers waiting to buy the boats as you built them, or were you building
Well,
and then
yeah,
selling? Or
yeah, that first winter, one customer. And then when that boat was seen on the beach with mine also the next summer, we built 5 the next winter. Neither one of us were working anywhere during the winter. We just went right to it. We built 5 winter of 75 and 76 and perfected our drawings and our plans. And we had to tweak them a little bit there to make everything fit, but then wrote everything down. And I got a set of drawings for those boats, which were a 5-foot bottom with a 8-foot beam, and they were 22-foot long, most of them. Well, now we build them a little more seaworthy. We build a 5.5-foot bottom and a little thicker bottom, and they still have the 8-foot beam. So we've actually changed our style, and we switched over in '79.
and do those have a transom tombstone and an inboard motor, inboard outboard?
Well, most of them did in those days. Everybody wanted the Volvo was very practical in those years, and everybody wanted a Volvo IO in them because you hook the hydraulics up. 90% of them were for commercial salmon fishing and albacore tuna fishing, so they needed their hydraulics, and it was just a natural. But now everybody is with the new 4-stroke outboard motors, and about 10 years ago, I switched over to making them. It wasn't quite 10 years ago. It was about 12, 13 years ago. Switched over to putting the outboards right on the transom with a splash well built around the motor to keep the water out of the boat. For a while, we built some for the 2-stroke outboard motors, and we built a 4-foot-long well on the inside because you didn't want salmon when you bring them in on your commercial gear to get in the propeller. By having the motor almost mid-boat, it worked real good, but you lost flotation and things like that. So we've actually changed to what the customer wanted, and that was transom mounted. And boy, they're working great for everybody.
So the boats you're building now, are they 22 feet long?
Yeah, actually, your exact measurement is 21'3". That's just the way my measurement came out. But you have to license for the next foot higher. So we're what we call the 22-foot model. They just for our Pacific Ocean and the chop and everything, they just work as good as anything. I built them as long as 26. I built them as short as 20. But that 22-footer, it's just the best boat for our conditions here.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, Terry, the first few boats that you built in the mid-'70s, do you remember how much you sold those for?
Yeah, we started out, the first one we sold for $1,815.
Really?
And then we got up to about $2,500 for the next winter because we started getting a little better quality material and stuff. We use old growth Douglas fir lumber. It's got a lot of resin in it. It's lightweight for strength. And it's got the resin, makes it rot resistant. And then, of course, the Douglas fir plywood is just phenomenal for boat building.
Yeah. So the Douglas fir dimensional lumber was used for the interior frames and the seats and stuff?
Yeah, and it still is today. You bet. I have some people that have little sawmills in their barnyards and stuff like that, and they find a good log. They give me a call. What do you need, and they'll cut some pretty nice stuff for me yet. So
yeah. So how many boats have you sold over the years, Terry?
Well, just in the Dories, this week I started at serial number 88.
Okay. Very cool.
And I built a few other boats like little prams and stuff like that don't count.
You don't count prams?
No, it's not in the serial number deal. And also I built my grandson up in Wasilla, Alaska, a little 12-foot dory, and that's not in there. Just an exact duplicate. They just shrunk it down for lake boat for him and stuff like that. So.
And what kind of plywood are you using these days for your boats, Terry?
It's still Douglas fir, and it's the sides are 3/8, but it's a special custom-made plywood, 5-ply. That gives you super strength, and it bends pretty good. It's not construction grade. And I've got a plywood mill down the southern Oregon coast that makes it for us on special order. Minimum order, 80 sheets. So whenever I get an order, it's not cheap.
Yeah, so, really. And what size sheets are you buying for your boats?
Well, they only make the 4x8, 4 foot by 8 foot. And then I've got all the equipment in my shop here to cut a bevel on the ends of it, and then we scarf it, glue it, clamp it together, and I make the sheets as long as I need. So
I see. Yeah. So you probably takes three sheets.
Three sheets would give us enough for the sides. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then what kind of glues are you using? Are you using any fiberglass cloth or epoxy on the boats?
I don't use any fiberglass cloth. Everything fits together. I make sure all of our seams are completely jointless, virtually. Everything has to fit perfectly. And wherever wood touches wood, I use epoxy, usually a 1-to-1 mix. It's a little bit thick and gelatinous. And if it ain't quite thick enough, I'll put in either talcum powder I get from one of the epoxy companies or the silica powder, which is ground up glass and for a thickener. Yeah, it works great. Mm-hmm. And I use a special nail. It's a T316 grade stainless nail, and I have a manufacturer that makes them for us, and they've got checkered heads, so anything like paint or whatever will stick to the head on them, because usually stainless is so shiny and slick that nothing will stick to it. And these are annular ring shank nails. They drive like a nail but hold like a screw. I buy them in 25-pound tubs, and then I sell to guys that somebody wants to build a boat locally. They come to me, and I sell them by the pound to those guys. So works great.
Yeah. And so once you've got the boat built, how do you finish the boats? Kind of a finish you put on them?
Well, from the shop here, all the woodwork is done. Anywhere there's got to be a hinge or a fastener, I use the best stainless steel piano hinges. I cut them to length, and the stainless steel screws to put doors on the bulkhead up front, the seats that have hinges, or a control console, which is mounted over the fish box pretty well about 2/3 forward of the boat, and there's 2 or 3 doors on that, and they all get the stainless steel hinges. And then it leaves my shop and goes to a glass shop down the road, and that's not for any strength. It's just for permanent protection and permanent coloring, and that gets choppered glass shot on the outside of the boat with a polyester resin.
No, wait, tell me that again.
Artist and craftsman. He shoots it on the outside to protect the boat, and then he'll put any color design on it that the customer wants. He just does a beautiful job of it.
So tell me what he does. He shoots glass onto it?
Yeah, it's a choppered fiberglass. Chopper gun is what it is. And it cuts the fibers up into real short little pieces, and it sprays it on mixed with the resin and the hardener all together. And then he rolls it out flat because it goes on a little bit fluffy. And he rolls all that stuff out versus a hand-laid cloth or fabric of any kind. This is chopper gun applied glass.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's what it's called, chopper gun application. And you put it on about 3/16 thick on the bottom, because when we come ashore, we shoot in through a set of breakers and slide way up on a dry, sandy beach with the motor still running, so we can load up our dories onto our trailers without getting stuck in the water. And so it gets a little wear and tear on the bottom. Sometimes there's a pebble on the beach or some seashells, and they'll stretch it a little bit. But this will last for years that way. And then the sides only get about 1/8 of an inch on them.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it's neat.
Yeah, it's called chopper gun?
Yeah, chopper gun applied fiberglass, yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Wow, I'm learning a lot today, Terry. This is awesome.
Oh, yeah, good. Yeah. Yeah, and years ago when I built my first dory in 1967, we didn't have that facility available here, and we painted the bottoms of our boat, but sliding up on the beach about 2 or 3 slides, and the paint would be wore off. And then because we run with outboard motors fast quite a ways, it would tend to wear the paint off just running in the ocean. But then when we troll for salmon commercially, we go real slow, and that didn't bother it. But you had to repaint the bottom of the boat several coats every season. And once that choppered fiberglass became available and guys started doing that, oh, man, you hardly ever look at the bottom of the boat.
Wow. So you don't put any paint?
It doesn't add too much weight either. Maybe, let's see, he'll put on about 35 pounds of resin along the choppered glass. And, that's going to add, probably 7 pounds per gallon or something like that. So it's going to add a few 100 pounds, but that's insignificant for these dories and the flotation they have.
Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. And
Yep.
so you probably don't paint the bottoms in. That's all you do to them.
No. A gel coat, he puts it on the bottom, but after a couple of seasons, it'll be wore off, and then you just got the clear bottom. And we sent boats clear to the Bering Sea from here and to Florida, Dories, and they all want that same stuff put on just for protection, and it really works good for everybody.
So is that something, where do you buy that stuff if you wanted to buy it, Terry?
Well, you can't buy it. It's a pretty expensive applicator. It's a big compressed air operated gun, and it actually feeds a cord up to the end where the gun is. Right out there is like a paint sprayer, and that cord, you can set the length that the cutter will cut the strands to. And someplace you want longer fibers, and most of the time you only want them about 2 inches long, so you can, round them over the corners of the boat and stuff like that, make them lay down. Otherwise, they like to stick out. And so you can control that. That works very good for him. And you just got to go to a glass shop that has that. And they're kind of portable. You have to take an air compressor with you, your 50 gallons, the resin, and all that. So it's pretty well shop mounted.
Okay. And then how about the sides and the interior of the boats? What do you do with those?
The inside, you do not want to glass both sides of plywood because you'll get moisture in there and start deteriorating, rotting, and breaking down. So the insides get an oil compound put in there, some way that plywood can breathe and dry out through the layers of it. And there's different things like you put stuff on your deck outside your house, and there'll be some water repellent in it and a little bit of oil in it, maybe linseed oil. And then you can mix some dye or stain or coloring in it just to color the inside of your boat. And you put that on about every other year on the inside, either with a weed sprayer or brush it on or roll it on or something. And a boat will last your lifetime if you take care of it that way. Let it dry out in the winter with floorboards lifted up, and it just works wonderful. It keeps the insides looking good, the clean up good from the fish blood and stuff like that.
Wow, that sounds like a very practical way to do it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, there's a new company that started making some stuff. It's the Flood Company. It's a Dutch outfit, but most hardware stores have it, and it's an oil stain and sealer you put on your decks and stuff like that. And we started using that here 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just phenomenal. Protects the inside of your boat, and basically it keeps the wood from ever rotting.
Wow. And then you paint the sides of the boat typically, or?
Well, I never paint it at all. We don't use paint at all. The deck up on front, up there, have a covered deck on these boats, coming back about 50 inches. And then the gear tray is built into each side for a water surface for landing commercial crab pots or putting your salmon gear in. Will get glassed on the top. But the gel coat is paraffin-based, and you put any color in it you want, and the guy that does the glassing, he'll go ahead and put that in your boat with your color pattern. And it's kind of a slick surface tube, and so it's basically self-preservation when you seal the glass. Because glass, once you shoot it on with a chopper gun, you roll it out, it may still have a little pinhole here or there that might allow water to get to the plywood, and you don't want that to happen. So the gel coat is virtually a sealing coat as well as a color coat.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
So that's where your color comes from. It's pigment inside the...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody gets an individual color, so the boats don't all look the same.
Yeah. So are there different styles of this boat that you sell now, Terry?
Not really. Not really. We basically have a basic hull design, which if they want longer, I'll add the length to the back of the boat. And basically, we've got it perfected. We're running with a following sea with lots of power. You dive off of a big old white cap and outrun it, and you dive into the wave ahead of you. The boat won't try to broach to starboard or port. It'll just kind of slow down, shake its head, dive up out of it, and keep going. And then the surf, sometimes you'll be jumping 10-foot breakers to get out to go fishing some days. And we got it perfected where they're just super strong and will not drown you or fill your boat with water going through a pretty good set of breakers to get out and go fishing.
Wow.
And then coming back in, you outrun a couple of breakers. You actually dive over them as they're breaking to get enough speed to slide up on the beach. So, yeah,
It sounds fun.
Crash. Yeah, people stand on the beach and they see you coming. You got a big air horn. You blow that, and they just stand and look at you with their eyes wide open. They think you're going to see a boat crash, and they won't get out of your way. So sometimes it gets a little tricky landing.
Yeah, that's funny. So what size motors are you putting on these boats?
Almost everybody's putting the Honda 90 horse 4-stroke on them. Mm-hmm. So they're a little bit heavy, but the way we designed the boat, they're made to carry that weight. And then the 20 to 25 gallon fuel tank goes up pretty close to the front, bolted down. So it just balances them out real good. On my personal dory, I didn't have money to spend. I bought a slightly used 70 horse Johnson 2-stroke 1996 model, and man, that's plenty of power for me. It just does a great job.
Yeah. A
little bit lighter motors, about half the weight of a 4-stroke.
Do the boats have flotation built into them, Terry?
No, we don't have to have. Coast Guard says if I'm building over a 20-foot boat, and I'm building out of wood like I am, and basically a commercial quality boat like I am, they just leave me alone. They give me the prefix for the serial number and checked on me a couple of times, and I don't hear from them anymore. So
okay.
I'm good to go. No flotation.
Okay. So, so have some of these boats capsized, Terry?
Well, they have in the past, but basically none have in the last 30 or 40 years. So
really?
Even going through the surf like we are, there's basically an air compartment up under the front deck up there with a motor on the back. If you get full of water, the boat still floats anyway. So
I see.
Enough wood in them that they're a floater instead of a sinker.
Interesting. Yeah. So what does a boat cost without the motor, Terry? Do you mind me asking? Give me a rough idea.
When I leave my shop here, I haven't changed the price in a number of years. I'm fixing to raise it just a little bit because we're doing a little more custom work, but they've been right at $9,000 going out the door of my shop here. But I'm probably raising them $300 or $400 here the coming season, which will be next winter, just because some people have asked for some upgrades, some fancy niceties here and there and stuff. And it takes me a couple extra days. And I don't do it, and I don't make any money. If I had to do this as a profit maker, I'd have quit years ago. To me, it's a wonderful hobby that I enjoy doing, and I make a few bucks at the end of the job, you know. I pay the girls, my daughters, 2 daughters that help me in the shop part-time, and I pay them pretty good to be here. And son-in-law is kind of learning it a little bit, too. One of the daughters just got married, and so they make more money than I do when they're working here.
Oh, my goodness. So, so have you worked another job all these years while you built these boats?
Oh, I always did, yeah. I commercial fished a little bit with a troller. I drove a snowplow for the local radar site when they were here for 10 years, and then I run a portable rock crusher for about 18 years in the winter months, and I'd work weekends, and then sometimes the rock crusher would be shut down in the winter because of the weather, so I'd just come work in a boat shop. My dad was working full-time, but he passed away in 1998, and after that, it's just me and the daughters here. But, yeah, in the summertime, I'm gone to Alaska. One daughter and her family have a big vegetable farm there in the Matanuska Valley, and I spend summers working up there on the farm. I don't even do boats in the summer.
Really?
So that's part of my income. And, of course, I've been drawing Social Security for quite a few years. I'm 73 years old. So.
Yeah. Wow, what a fascinating deal. I got to get down there and see you, Terry.
Yeah, I'd be glad to have you come by sometime. So
I would love that.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're starting the last boat of the season here. And I've got 2 prospective customers talking to me about next winter. And what I asked them to do to get on the list, I said, you give me half down. That buys all the material and pays all the expenses to build one. And I work for nothing for 2 months till your boat's done. And I said, when it gets done, I get the balance, and that's my paycheck. So.
Yeah. So it takes about 2 months to build one, huh?
Yeah, at least 2 months. Depends on availability of material. I try to buy it ahead and get it air dried out and stuff, and then sometimes I need another shipment of marine plywood, and they can't make it. It takes them about a month to get that going. So, Yeah, it takes about 2 months to do one.
So these boats are made specifically for surf launching and fishing. Is that right, Terry?
Yes, they do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, they're 1983, actually fall of 82, a professional consultant, an old retired Norwegian halibut fisherman at Seattle, used to fish halibut, got hold of us and he said, hey, he says, the Aleutians up there on St. Paul Island in the Bering Sea, they've been harvesting the fur seals all these years, and they got to quit doing that because there's no money in it anymore, and they'd like to start halibut fishing. You think you guys could build us a few dories that would work good up there? And we kicked it around a little bit and said, we think we could. So we made them 3 24-footers, put a cuddy cabin in the front with a windshield above the cuddy cabin, and we had a commercial gear company in Seattle build smaller long line pulling gear, hydraulics and stuff that pull the long lines, and we rigged them up completely turnkey here at the boat shop, 3 of them, and sent them up to St. Paul the summer of 83. And I got a letter from one of the guys here not too long back, and he says, those dories started a whole industry. I got in front of me here. There are now about 35 locally owned boats out there, larger than the dories. They bring in about $1 million of revenue to the village of St. Paul per summer now. Your boat started it all. And you know what? That makes me feel good that we were so successful. They didn't have to experiment. They got our boats, they put them in the water, turned the keys, and the halibut gear was there, and they went fishing, and they were very successful.
Wow, that is cool.
This guy is now, this is one of the Aleutians that wrote to me, and he's a consultant in Anchorage now, and I tracked him down, and he got one of the boats, and he was the village chairman at the time. And so then I went up there that summer and worked in St. George, which is a smaller community, just a few hundred people. They bought some aluminum boats, but they didn't know how to make them fish or work. And I went up as a small boat fishery consultant in later summer of 83 and helped them get their fleet going. They bought 8 or 10 of them aluminum boats. A little bit different from me, but we got them going, and they did good too. And they ended up with their own halibut quotas around the islands and everything. The big boats can come in and take their halibut or nothing or fish on them. So it was very successful for them as they backed down the fur seal harvesting, got into the halibut fishing.
Wow, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So Terry, how do you so these boats obviously get hauled around on a trailer. How do you get from your trailer to getting the boat in the water in the surf? Well,
trailers are all custom built locally here. 1 or 2 different people build them. Some guys build their own, and they're a special tilt bed trailer with rollers that go from one side clear to the other. And what you do, you drive with a rig that's got fairly wide tires. You don't want to get stuck. You drive down, make a circle so that your back end is facing the surf. You undo the winch line, undo the boat, and you back up into the water in about 1.5 feet of water, hit the brakes, and the boat self-unloads. Then you just drive up and park your rig. Hopefully you got somebody to help with the boat, and they turn the boat around. In fact, I have somebody park my rig, and I hop out and get my boat turned around, facing the waves, and then whoever parks my rig comes running back down, and we push her out in about 2.5 feet of water, hop in, run the motor down, fire it up, and then head out through the breakers. And then with the tilt bed trailer, it's basically sail floating. You come back in through the surf, get up far as you can with high speed, and if you don't get clear out of the water, you hook a tow rope up your boat, pull it up to solid sand, and then as you back under your boat, the trailers are a special tilt bed, and the bed will tilt to a certain degree, and it'll start lifting the front of the boat. The back end digs into the sand, and just keep backing up until the boat's about 2/3 loaded, and then it'll start scooting. That's when you stop, pull your winch line back, winch it on, and then the tilt bed flattens out with the rest of the trailer frame, and then you drive away without getting stuck. It takes only a couple of minutes to load up that way. Special trailers just for the way we do it here.
Wow, that is really cool, Terry.
I hope I didn't confuse you, but
no.
It just goes so smooth. It's hard. It takes longer to tell you about it than it does to do it.
Well, you got a lot of practice.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, in the old days, we didn't have those kinds of trailers. We had to, push and pull and try to figure out how to get our boats up on the trailer. They actually had wood frames under them and all that stuff. Wash machine rollers for rollers. And back in like I say, I started 48 with my dad off and on. And then in the 50s, we had the double enders. And it was pretty interesting trying to load a boat in those days. You unhook it from your rig and push your trailer by hand back to your boat, and then you start winching on. The trailer tongue would go way up in the air before we had the tilt beds. Crank it on, and then back your rig up, and then everybody'd help you try to lift your tongue up and hook it on the ball head. So,
oh, man.
We done it the hard way, and now we do it the easy way.
Yeah. So do you still get out and go fishing yourself, Terry?
Yeah. I get done in dory building here in April, and then I have the month of May and a couple of weeks in June. I head to Wasilla, Alaska about the middle of June every year for the farming season, and get back usually in October after farming's over with. So I get in at least a good month of fishing when the ocean lets me, and we get the freezer full of Dungeness crab and salmon and bottom fish and stuff. So it looks good.
Cool. Very fun. Very good.
Yep.
So, Terry, if somebody is listening and is interested in getting more information about your boats or maybe making an order, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, go to our website, which we tried to make real simple and real user-friendly. It's learnedsboats.com. It's all one word, learnedsboats, all lowercase, .com. And then once they get there, they can actually go to the links page and see a couple of videos of us. Me teaching dory building to third graders on the beach, one of them off of YouTube, and the other link is the Oregon Public Broadcasting that they did about us here about a year ago, and they did a pretty good job of showing it in just a few minutes' time. So, and they also show dories coming and going in the ocean on those. So, and some pretty good lessons. So if they're curious about dories, both them videos will educate them real good.
Okay, and the spelling for the website could you give us that, Terry?
Yeah, Learneds is LearnedsBoats.com. Learnedsboats.com.
Okay, very good. And sounds like you're building, 2 or 3 or 4 boats a year?
Yeah, 2 or 3. 2 would, at my age of 73, I'd be happy with 2, but we have people come around twisting our arms and said, well, I want one too. So we're doing 3 this winter anyway. Yep.
Yeah, very fun. Very good.
Yep, it is. To thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah. So, Terry, we're going to wrap it up here. Any other comments you'd like to make?
Not too much. They were asking the question who are here, what's the favorite part of what you do? It's seeing one of your customers after they made a few trips in the ocean, and they say, oh, I never dreamed I would handle like that in the ocean. I've heard about it, but compared to some of the other boats that they've been out in, some of them take a fiberglass boat out or something, and we try to carry the wide bottom quite a ways forward, and it just gives them great flotation and seaworthiness, and they're thoroughly impressed. They make good boats to go offshore to chase albacore tuna, and you go from 15 to 35, 40 miles offshore in the summer to get albacore, and they're just perfect for that because usually the wind will come up before you get back. And they might get a little spray in their face, but it just works great for them.
And these boats are completely open cockpits?
Yes, they are, except for a covered deck up there. It comes back, like I say, about 4.5 feet from the bow. And that's part of the strength, and that way you keep some of your stuff dry. If you happen to be in the spray or choppy water, you have life jackets and your coats and stuff up under the bow there. So other than that, they're completely open.
Very good. Well, I really appreciate your time today, Terry. We'll go ahead and wrap it up here, and thanks so much. And we'll chat here for a second after we stop the recording. So thanks for being on the podcast.
Okay, Dan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Terry, I really appreciate you doing the interview. You are a gentleman and a scholar for sure, and I love what you're doing, and I hope to get down there and see one of your boats one of these days. And I'm especially intrigued by the choppered fiberglass that's applied to these boat bottoms to make them super durable. That's sounds like a pretty fascinating process. It really works well, so very cool. Well, thanks for tuning in this week, folks. Episode at least the intro and outro a little shorter than usual, just because of everything going on here at the home front. But I appreciate it if you tune in again next week for some more fun. If you want to email me and share some wooden boat stories, Dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com is where you can find me, in addition to Wooden Boat Dan on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube. Have a great week. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan over and out. God bless.